was a good response from the participants. Around 200 participants from different colleges and universities joined our first webinar on exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises. And registrar was also very happy in our exercise. In a webinar series of 4 topics on the exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises, today we are dealing with the resource mobilization strategies for social enterprises. I welcome all the participants for this second webinar, and I also welcome Professor Ishwan Radogre to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you. We have very less number today, actually. That's what I see, but hope they will join. Anyway, we will start. I'll first share the screen. Okay.
Yes, screen, yes.
Right. Okay, very good morning to everybody. I hope you were able to follow the first part yesterday, where we talked about the concept and theories, and also just had a quick review of the status of social enterprises in India. If you have seen your course structure, the second unit essentially focuses on two important elements. One is on financial resource mobilization. So when we say resource mobilization, it is mostly focused on financial resource. The other resources like human resource and other things come in the next unit. And apart from that, there is a issue of strategy formulation. Primarily strategy for matching social value and monetary value. This, I think, is the core of the social enterprises. So I'll focus on these two elements today. One is in terms of resource mobilization, and the other one is related to strategy formulation, or in a way strategic management for social enterprises. So that will be the focus. And after I finish, I think I'll take about 45 minutes to 1 hour. Yesterday, I think we just were off track a bit in terms of time. So I'll try to finish it slightly early so that we can have discussion. And if there are some questions left out yesterday, if you want later, you can ask that question also. Plus, I think question related to today. Okay. Let us begin with the process of establishment. So there are three elements I am talking about. One is a formation of social enterprise. The other one is finance. The other one is strategy formulation. So just to remind those who have not come yesterday, and or maybe just to all of you, this is typically like what we do in your classroom. In part one, we understood why social enterprises have evolved, how they are different from regular business organizations, okay, and different theories and status. Now in part two, let's examine the process of establishment of social enterprises, which I had slightly touched upon yesterday, then mobilization of resources, and strategy formulation for social enterprises. Now, when and how social enterprise is formed, how are you going to establish typically a social enterprise, and how are you going to mobilize capital for social enterprise. Now these are very critical issues, because entrepreneurs would be essentially looking towards this. I think every entrepreneur, especially if you are a startup, if you are a first generation entrepreneur, then your most important consideration would be what is the process of starting the social enterprise, and how are we going to mobilize the required financial resources for that. When we look at how social enterprises actually get formed world over, how are they actually established world over, we can find three different ways in which the three different modes in which social enterprises are getting formed. One is, of course, establishment of a new business with social orientation, okay, and an objective of social value creation, okay, based on entrepreneurial motivation and conducive environment. That means those entrepreneurs who would be looking towards, starting a venture on their own, those entrepreneurs who have that motivation to start a new enterprise based on the conducive environment. That means there will have to be, of course, scope for such organizations to come up. There will have to be facilitative environment in that country or in that place. So given all that, you will establish a social enterprise as a new organization. This is one mode in which it comes. I'll explain the process later. The second mode is non-profit organizations evolving into earned income organizations. In this case, there are already, these organizations are established. They are not social enterprises, but they are NGOs. They are non-profit organizations. So that means they are into some activity already and they are running an organization. And this being a non-profit organization, obviously they are dependent on donations, charities, right? So now they want to transform. This is transformation. They want to transform from a non-profit to a social enterprise. That means they want to retain their basic objective of social orientation, and then they want to depend on their own earned income. So already existing organization can transform into a social enterprise. This transformation may take place in different forms. For example, let us assume that a non-profit organization is a trust. Okay, it's a public trust. Just let us imagine. That means registered under the Trust Act. They can remain a trust and go on adding income earning activities and slowly reduce their dependence on donations, charity, etc., grants, etc., and they can earn income. This is possible. Alternatively, sometimes you can, as a trust, a trust is also a legal person. Therefore, through the trust, you can also create another legal person. Okay, for example, if you are into microcredit, then you can create a Section 8 organization. That is, for the purpose of banking activity, you can create another organization, or maybe the same trustees can join together and create another organization. So these possibilities are there. But when you do that, it becomes the first one, establishing a new organization. But normally, there is a possibility that the existing non-profits can transform themselves in a phased manner into a social enterprise. Also, there is a possibility that for-profit organizations may develop more and more social orientation and slowly transform into a social enterprise. This is also possible. This is not happening much. Okay, 1 and 2 are happening. That means new organizations are coming up with social objective, and non-profits are slowly evolving into social enterprises. There is a possibility that for-profits also can, imbue more and more social orientation and become a social enterprise. So these are the three modes in which a social enterprise can come into existence. Now, if you are establishing a new organization, or if you are establishing a social enterprise, how are you going to incorporate it? How are you going to register it? What is the form in which you are going to do it? Okay, a social enterprise may take any legal form as may be desired by the entrepreneur. I told you yesterday that social enterprise is not a legal category. Social enterprise is a functional category, which means a social enterprise may be in any legal form, trust or society, okay, or firm or company. Any of such things are possible. Now it is for the entrepreneurs to decide, entrepreneurs to decide as to what form of legal entity they should create given this setting. If in the future, however, we get a separate legislation for social enterprise for incorporation, then maybe the choice will be simpler. But as of now, I think since you don't have a legislation, you will have to decide which type of organization you should become. That is your choice. Therefore, mode of incorporation depends on the choice of the form. Now, how you are going to incorporate it, how you are going to register it, depends on what is your choice of the type of organization. For example, if you want to create a trust or a society, you will register it locally with the now I think these are registered with the same deputy registrar of cooperatives or something like that. Earlier it used to be sub registrar who used to do it. If you want to create a company, a company that is either a non-profit company or a private limited company, then of course you have to follow the mechanism that is available through the corporate affairs division, and you have to register yourself as a company. So it depends on what if you want to create a cooperative, then you will have to go to the cooperative department to register it. It's important to note that from the legal perspective, okay, it will be a business organization, typically a business organization like any other organization, and all rights and obligations remain the same. So in your mind, it is social enterprise. You as an entrepreneur, you are trying to bring in both social orientation and monetary orientation in that. All that is fine. But from the perspective of law, that means technically, you will simply remain either a business organization or a non-profit organization. If you have registered yourself as a trust or a society, you remain non-profit. If you register yourself as a firm or a company, you remain a for-profit organization, unless it is a non-profit company. Okay. So that's how it is. It is therefore critical decision for the entrepreneur to choose a suitable legal form. So when you are incorporating, when you are establishing it, you are trying to basically decide first as to what is going to be the legal form that you choose, and then you have to incorporate accordingly. For every organization, for incorporation, I think as students of commerce, you have already probably studied, there are processes to be done. Okay, there will have to be some promoters, they will have to have a promoters meeting. If it is company, you will have to draft the memorandum of association, articles of association, those kinds of things are there. Then similarly, if you are creating a trust, you will have to have identify trustees who are going to be the entrepreneurs. You will have to prepare a trust deed. So these are all technicalities of starting an organization, which applies to any organization, any business organization. The same thing is applicable here also. Only thing is, the most important critical thing for any social entrepreneur is to decide, by weighing all the positive and negative things, to decide which form of organization, which type of legal entity they want to create, and then follow the various procedures that are already set very clearly for establishing that kind of a legal entity. So this is how a social enterprise is established, like any other organization. If there are more specific details needed, then I'll be able to answer that during discussions. Okay, this is about the, okay, there is also, in case of an already existing organization, I think I already told you about transformation. The transformation into social enterprise is gradual. Okay, it is not that suddenly it becomes a social enterprise tomorrow, because you are not necessarily changing the legal form. It is going to be in a phased manner. The existing organization can incorporate features of social enterprise, okay, in a planned way, step by step manner. As I already said, in case of a non-profit organization, slowly you start earning more income depending on your own income. Slowly you give up your dependence on donations, grants. Slowly you will do it. So a non-profit may be in a phased manner increase its income generating activities and eventually become self-sufficient. The transformation process may also necessitate legal changes. As I said, if necessary, you can create one more legal entity in order to handle the commercial activity or the income earning activity. If you think that the existing organization is not suitable to handle that, you can create one more legal entity. So this is to transform the existing organization. So this is the overall structure of how a social enterprise is formed or established. Okay. Now, the most critical thing that I think everybody is worried about, that everybody wants to be sure of, is getting money to run the business activities, resource mobilization. Social enterprises are organizations that compete with, okay, for-profit organizations. Hence, they need to look at size, professionalism, and viability. This is very, very important for any social enterprise, because they normally work in a domain where already there are for-profit enterprises. You cannot simply be like a non-profit organization. In case of a non-profit organization, you are doing it without any profit. You are doing it as service. You say that you are doing it as service, and therefore you are not actually competing with a for-profit enterprise. However, in social enterprise, you bring in the element of viability, commercial viability. Therefore, you will have to operate at a certain size. If you don't operate at a certain size, you may not be viable. Too small, you may not be viable. Okay, and you need to have all the professionalism that for-profit organizations have, which means you cannot simply appoint anybody who is interested. You need to bring in qualified people, okay, more educated people, and you will have to pay them well. Now, these are, I think, very, very important things, and you have to make the organization viable. That means the organization should generate a surplus. This is very important. So, when you have to do this, the most critical thing is finance. If you have to operate at a slightly bigger level, you need more capital. If you have to bring in, good professionally qualified people, then also you need more money. Okay, so this is very, very significant thing. You have to raise money, and a lot of people think that raising money is difficult. Okay, yeah, it is not very easy. In fact, for that matter, it is not very easy even for profit organizations, unless you have a family background of business or something. Even for a for-profit organization, for a new entrepreneur, for a startup, it is not very easy to get money. So it is not only for social enterprises, it is for all businesses. Social enterprises have slightly more difficulty, mainly because the investors think, okay, that they may not benefit. So that's what I'm saying. Social enterprises do not focus on shareholder value creation. So this is a constraint, additional constraint to the social enterprises in raising money. So those who have to invest will, think twice. They would say, okay, the return I am going to get may not be much. Okay, this problem comes. Therefore, social enterprises need to be very innovative in identifying the right source of finance. So they have to think very clearly which is the best way of mobilizing resource, which source you can tap. To do that, those who are establishing a social enterprise will have to be aware of different sources of finance. Okay, each source is to be weighed upon. You can either go for one source, or you can go for a combination of sources. So all these things are possible. So you will have to have a clear understanding of the different sources and the positive and negative factors of those sources. Some sources may be good, but it may be difficult to access. Some sources may be easy to access, but they may have certain disadvantages. So these things will have to be carefully weighed upon by the entrepreneurs while raising the money. So let us basically focus on different sources of finance, and in that source, how you are going to access that. Okay. Now, also we need to know, we need to also know that there are specific challenges that the social enterprises face while raising financial resources. The most important ones are, usually social enterprises will have a long gestation period, which means if you normally think that a typical for-profit organization is likely to break even and make profit in 3 to 5 years, then this period may be double for a social enterprise. Normally, this is what world over the experience shows. That means if a for-profit organization can start, can break even and start making profit within 5 years, then maybe you need 10 years for a social enterprise to do that. It may be done earlier also. I'm not saying there are organizations which will start earning profit surplus right from first year. It is not that it is impossible, but usually there is a long gestation period. Now, what does it mean? If there is a long gestation period for a organization, then investors will have to wait longer to get back the money. Okay, you need additional capital infusion to maintain, to have working capital and other kinds of needs. You may need continuous infusion of capital. That means investors should be ready to go on parting with more and more money initially for a fairly long period of time till they start getting back the money. So this is the situation. This should be clearly understood. Okay, this is the situation. So given this, what kind of source would be good for us? Similarly, lower returns, particularly to the investors, lower returns. So their return will not be as much as they do get a return. They do get a decent return, but it is not as much as what for profits can give. Okay, so that also is to be kept in mind. That's a challenge that social enterprise has. Then there is a challenge of measuring and communicating the social value. I'll separately discuss that. There are methods of doing that, but still, we say that a social enterprise creates both monetary value and social value. We have been talking about the double bottom line. The one part of the bottom line we can measure: how much monetary surplus you created, how much net profit you had monetarily, easily measure. But how are you going to measure social value? More importantly, how are you going to communicate this social value to the investors, those who have put their money, to tell them, look here, you have gained so much in social terms. This is a very, very important challenge. It can be done. There are mechanisms, but these things are to be very clear in the minds of a social entrepreneur, that I have these challenges. I have to be very clear on this. So because of this, the other challenge is lack of interest among traditional investors. Normally, those who invest their money, those who put their money in capital market, those who put their money in mutual funds, those kinds of investors may not be very keen on putting their money in a social enterprise. So you'll have to probably think of very, very innovative, very different kind of investors to do that. So that is a challenge. That means the number of source for a social enterprise is relatively limited. One section of the investors are out, they don't come in here. Along with all this, they have to also compete with the mainstream business organization to get money, to raise financial resources. They have to also compete with the traditional business organizations or for-profit organizations, because for-profit organizations also are in the market raising money, tapping the same sources that you are looking for. Okay, so therefore, there are challenges for social enterprises. They have to understand right from day one that it is not an easy thing. They have to do a lot of homework to actually get finance. But again, I will say there are sources that you can tap. There are methods to do that. So first, knowing all these problems, knowing all these challenges, social enterprises will have to zero on one or more right sources through which they are more likely to get the financial resource. Let us look now at what are such sources. Normally, the two important sources that most social enterprises tap are angel investors and impact investors. I think I just made a small reference to this yesterday. Angel investor referred to, I think you have probably studied this if you are studying portfolio management or capital market, things like that. Angel investors are those investors who normally make investment in the startups, in the new enterprises, okay, startups. Now, we call them angel investors because they are like angels, they are like messengers of God. When there is a new first generation entrepreneur coming up without any backup, without any money, okay, with only a good idea. Some people would say, they appreciate and say, okay, they put their money. Now, is angel investor only a concept, or do we really have angel investors? In which countries do we have angel investors? Okay, we have a large number of angel investors in India also. Globally, there are angel investors, but in the last 10 years, the number of angel investors in India has tremendously increased, and we have a large number of them. Not only that, there are large number of angel investors, but there is a network of angel investors. Okay, you can just go to this website, indianangelnetwork.com. Like this, there are a couple of others also. You will see a big list of people who have money to be invested in new enterprises, startup enterprises. So one good source is to tap angel investors, right? Those investors who have kept aside money for investing in startups. Now, also we have to remember, all angel investors may not be interested in social enterprises. They are interested in new enterprises. It doesn't mean all of them are interested in social enterprises, because they may be investing in new enterprises, hoping that new enterprises have much greater chances of growth, and there are much greater chances of higher profit, or maybe when they become bigger and when they go public, as initial investors, you get a lot of shares. So all these kinds of ideas may be there even among angel investors. So I am not saying that all angel investors will support social enterprises, but I'm sure more than half of the angel investors that we have would definitely support social causes and social investment, and therefore that's a right platform for social enterprises to try and explore. Similarly, there are impact investors. Now, impact investors are much closer to social enterprises, because as the word itself says, the phrase says, they are not so much interested in monetary profit, but they are more interested in the impact their investment is going to make. So what is the impact my investment is going to make? So such investors who make an investment by considering the impact that the investment is going to make, or the impact that the organization where they are investing is going to make, okay, as a parameter for investment. There are investors like that. Both institutional investors are there and individual investors are there. Impact here obviously means social impact. Of course, economic impact as well, because they may be interested in how this organization will bring in economic emancipation, economic empowerment of certain groups of people. Social enterprises, of course, have that objective as well. And impact investors will be thinking of social impact also. Again, impact investors are there in India. Okay, this website that I have listed here, IIIC.in, this is the website of the Impact Investors Club. Okay, we have an Impact Investors Council, Impact Investors Club, a group of impact investors. Again, you can find out who are those impact investors whom you can contact, because once you know their background and the way they want to make investment, you will be able to approach the right person or the right institution. Okay, so impact investors are there, so you can think of them. Third, social enterprises can also think in terms of the same sources which normally make grants to non-profit organizations. There are both national and international NGOs and foundations, okay, which normally make grants to the non-profit organizations. Now, you can also explore them, because here you are giving them an option, a better option. As a social enterprise, you can tell them that you normally give grant. Once you give a grant, that money is gone, once for all. You will never ask that money back. It's a charity, it's a donation, okay, it's a grant. The same organization, if you say, I'm doing this work on the same area, I'm doing the work related to environment, I'm doing the work related to rural development, okay, so but don't give me a grant, you make an investment in me. That means I will return that money. Obviously, a lot of non-profits will be interested in that, because there is an alternative way in which they can spend money for social causes They can give money and also make sure that their money comes back. In any case, they are not interested in profit. In any case, they are not interested in how much return, monetary return they get, because they are grant making organizations. Now, if you can convince grant making organizations to make a investment in your organization, it will be much better. There are many social enterprises in India also where organizations have invested in them. Now please remember, for social enterprises, receiving grant is not a taboo. Not that they cannot get any grant. They can receive grants as well if somebody is interested to give a grant. But raising grant is more difficult compared to raising investment. Therefore, if you approach such grant making organizations and convince them that here is an opportunity for them to spend their money for the same cause, but also keep their money safe and hope that the money would come back, right? So there are such things that have happened. Therefore, both national and international foundations and charities and NGOs, when I say those which make grants, such organization also can be tapped as a source for social enterprises. Then venture capital firm. Now, just as there are venture capital firms who will make risk capital investment in new ventures, there are in India itself venture capital firms which make investment exclusively in social enterprises. Now, this is, I think, a great news for social enterprises. So social enterprises don't have to think that they'll have to go to a bank and borrow money. No, there are venture capital firms, and I am giving these examples from India, right? Some of them are global. That means they operate in India as well as outside. Some of them are very, very Indian. So we have venture capital firms. That means firms that provide risk capital, which means they invest in the equity, they invest in the share capital, they bear the risk, and they do it for social enterprises. They are established for that purpose. So a couple of them like Lok Capital, Avishkar Venture Management, okay, Elivar Equity, Manthera Venture. So see, these are there. These are examples in India itself. So there are many such venture capitalists who would be investing, making risk capital, providing risk capital. And when you go to venture capital firms, you also have an advantage. They will help you in a lot many technical ways, so that advantage is also there. So such things are available for social enterprises to tap. Then globally, there is another source that is coming up that is called community shares. Now, community shares are more or less like cooperative shares, but they are withdrawable shares, okay, basically invested by local community. That means if a social enterprise is coming up in a particular area for the benefit of the people of that area, then you can approach people of that area only, that community only, whoever, they are willing and they have money to spare to make an investment. And it can be community shares or it can be regular shares, but you can say, okay, I am coming to you because you are the local person and my organization is working for the local benefit. Or you can make it typically technically community share, wherein they invest and at a later point they take back the money. Okay. So that is also possible, not in big quantity, but it can be tried. Another which has become very popular these days is crowdfunding. A lot of organizations have done this, and they go into crowdfunding. For example, sometimes they go into this new platforms where it is possible for you to go for attracting crowd funds, like Milap. Milap is one such platform which facilitates social enterprises and such organizations to get money through crowdfunding. So you largely, you go for a large net and then ask for small contributions from lot of people. They would be making small investments and therefore their expectations will not be very high, but you will be getting relatively larger capital. One recent example that I remember is from a worker cooperative in Kerala, ULCCS. They are into construction sector. This is basically a cooperative of the construction workers. They wanted to bid for a big state contract, I think of making some highway or something like that, for which the caution deposit that they had to keep itself was a few crore rupees. Okay. So what they did was, like for example, you have to keep a 5 crore rupee caution deposit because the project is a 50 crore rupee project. If that is the case, how to get that money? Then, this cooperative went into cooperative community and sent out a kind of a request for all cooperatives to contribute, saying that they will refund it. And many cooperatives contributed 10,000, 5,000, like that. They mobilized the money required and they went in for the tender and they won the tender. Very, very important. Okay. So you can look within organizational community, you can look within geographical community, or you can, tap larger crowd even outside your community, like for crowdfunding, and try and get money. All these are not easy ways. All these have their challenges. All these have the issues with them. Not that they are all very simple and you can just simply go and make it, but these sources are available. So somebody, an individual or a group who wants to be social entrepreneurs need not be afraid that they are not able to raise money. They can raise money. There are a lot of sources which can be tapped and money can be raised. And these sources, sometimes an individual source may be helpful. One angel investor might be willing to give you a couple of crores of rupees of investment. Quite possible, right? Or you combine some of these sources, you will be able to generate higher income. There are many case studies. You can simply go to the internet and in Google search or somewhere type for these case studies on how social enterprises have raised their money. You get many case studies and you can see how the social enterprises actually done it. Normally, what the social enterprises do for raising money is initially they try and manage with as much of own sources as possible, as much of known sources, known group investment as possible. And slowly, once they start their activity, they will be in a position to attract other investors. It is not that you should first mobilize capital and then go for starting the organization. You start an organization at a small scale with smaller investment from those who are willing to support. And once you start the activity, you will be able to showcase it and then you will be able to get the money better. So these are some of the popular sources. These days, there are also some other innovative sources that are coming up. So it is not that only these sources. If you look at how social enterprises are becoming innovative in raising capital, you will see some such things. For example, one is blended finance. Here there is a blend of two kinds. One is blend of sources. The other one is blend of returns. Okay. So blended source means combination of grants and investments. Some institutions may give part of the money as grant and part as investment. Or from some institution you get grant and some other institution or individual you get investment. That means as a social enterprise, you look for both. You bring in a blend of both grants and investments. Similarly, to the investor, you provide a blended return. You tell them they get two types of return. One is the monetary return, the other one is the social return. Okay. So there, of course, comes the question of measurement of social value. I will come to that a little later. There are also collaborative finance. That means syndicated financing. It is possible that many institutions can join together. So you can yourself initiate kind of teaming up of people or teaming up of institutions and try and get money through a syndicated financing. That is also possible. State financing. Normally, governments also provide either a patronage or finance if not for the organization as investment, they do give it as part, as part of the activity. Depending on which activity you are doing, there are possibilities of getting some grants or getting some patronage from the governments. When I say grants, government may give some subsidy. For example, you are raising money from one source, and then because you are raising money for a particular activity, government may say, okay, you are eligible to get this money at a lesser interest rate, or a subsidy. That means part of the money government will return to the lender, for example, if you have borrowed money. Or sometimes government will patronage by placing orders. Okay, so you are a social enterprise, and let us say you are making some solar lamps or solar heaters or solar electricity, something like that, and government wants it for government departments, and many times government may give that patronage. Because you are a social enterprise, let us buy from, we will buy from you, some such thing. For example, in Karnataka we have this. If you are a cooperative, then the government says that for the government organizations, if they are buying from a cooperative, they don't have to go for those three quotations or tenders, etc. If it is within that amount, you can straight away buy from a cooperative. This is a patronage given by government. So there is also such kind of support available from government that also can be tapped. Sometimes you get subsidy, sometimes you get reduced rate of interest, sometimes you get some funding or grant, sometimes you get patronage. So this also can be used. These are being increasingly now used. The other one is not a direct finance, but just I think we have to remember there is a lot that has been talked about today about social stock exchanges. There are many countries which have established social stock exchanges. Essentially, social stock exchanges deal with instruments related to socially oriented organizations. Okay, so the instruments are varied. Instruments may be like share cap, equity instrument, may be like bonds or anything like that. But basically, social stock exchanges facilitate investment in social sector. Therefore, if there is social stock exchange available, then by floating instruments in social stock exchange also, social enterprises can raise the money. Of course, in India, we don't have social stock exchange as such. There are proposals now on that. Now, it is possible that we can have that. Of course, in India, there is this debate going on. Should we have a separate social stock exchange, or should there be within the existing stock exchange another window, for social sector? These kinds of things are now being discussed. This is also an emerging area where wherever you have such stock exchanges, it is possible for social enterprises to tap. So there are these two sets of sources available. Some already established sources, some innovative sources, they can be tapped, which means social enterprises have fairly good choice of sources for getting capital. It is not that it is extremely difficult, you don't get capital at all. That situation is not there. You can certainly get the money if you tap these sources. Okay, now the other important part for this particular unit relates to strategic management, in particular strategy formulation, and strategy formulation with a focus on matching social goal with monetary goal. That I think is the critical part of it. Matching social goal with monetary goal. So the core of a social enterprise lie in developing a mix or developing a happy balance between financial and social goals. We have been saying that they are business organizations, but they create social value. They are business organizations, but they are created to serve a social purpose. Okay. Now, how are you going to make this mix of financial and social goals? This means the social enterprises should be able to create, okay, both the monetary value and the social value. They have to create simultaneously both monetary value and social value. This in turn calls for formulation of clear and concrete strategy, okay, followed by sound functional management for effective implementation. So if you are a social enterprise, you will have to create both financial value and social value. If you have to do that, then you need a proper strategy for that, how you can bring in that balance. You also need proper functional management to support that strategy. Functional management means like financial management, human resource management, marketing management, all these are required. So you need strategy, and to implement that strategy, you need good functional management. That is why we say strategic management for social enterprises is a very, very critical thing. In this, of course, I am not focusing on functional management here. I am focusing basically on strategy formulation. How are we going to have a strategy in such a way that we will have a good balance between social value and financial value creation? So that is I would say the core issue for most social enterprises. Okay, how do we start strategic planning? This is similar to strategic planning for any organization. Therefore, I am not going into much of the details. As you all know, all your planning starts with vision and mission building. Every organization, whether it is a business organization or an educational institution or any organization, there will have to be a clear vision and mission. And while building the vision and mission, it is important for a social enterprise to involve different stakeholders. It is not that in case of a social enterprise, an individual entrepreneur will sit and finalize a vision and mission, but vision and mission will have to be done on a collective, participative manner, so that you will have clarity about what you want to be 20 years down the line, what you want to achieve 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line. And for that, what is your short-term plan? What is your medium-term plan? These things can be worked out only when the vision and mission are set up, and this will have to be done in the first stage. Your entire strategic planning starts with that. Then locating the present strategic position by evaluating existing external situation and internal capabilities. So if you are thinking of creating a social enterprise, you need to look both of them. Where do you stand as of now? For example, how much money do you have? How much expertise do you have? How many people do you have? Okay, how many competitors do you have that is outside, right? So what is your total clientele, likely clientele group? You will have to see so many things. You know, this planning is like any other business. But when you do this, you evaluate the external situation. Okay, that means what is the need, what is the demand, what is the unmet demand in the market, how many players are already there, of them how many are for profit, how many are social enterprises. So you evaluate all of them, evaluate your own internal capabilities. What is there out there, how much do I have, internal capability in the sense how much money do I have, how much human resource strength I have, how much expertise I have. Okay, so make this evaluation and locate your strategic position. Where do you stand as of now? Strategic position means where do you stand as of now when you have started this enterprise, where do you stand now? Okay, that is a very, very clear, very, very important clarity required for you to proceed in making the strategies, long term, medium term, short term, all of them. So after this, you devise implementation strategies. How are you going to implement it? Then, of course, the cycle, implement it, measure the performance, re-strategize if necessary, again implement that cycle, continue. So this is typically, this part of the strategic planning is typically same like what you do for any other organization. In a sense, it also says that as a social enterprise, you are a very, very professional organization. You have to be a very professional organization. When it comes to this part, management, professionalism, there is no difference between for profit and social enterprise. This is very significant. So follow these things and make a proper strategic planning. Now, in this, the critical thing is the strategy for double bottom line. That means your strategy you are evolving basically for this double bottom line of financial value and social value. Now, how do you begin? You begin with a full clarity on the expectation of the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders may be the people who are going to be your consumers. That means who will be buying your goods and services. Stakeholders may be those who are investing in your organization. Stakeholders may be your whole group of people who are starting this organization, right? So what are the expectations of these people? What do people expect? That means consumers expect. What do investors expect? What do those who are launching the social enterprise expect? Very, very important clarity about these things will have to be there. That's because to see how much monetary value should be there, to see how much social value should be there, you need to have this clarity. For example, if you have a clientele group or if you have a consumer group who are economically very, very backward, that means they are poor, they are not able to really pay a higher return, then you will have to think about it. I'll give an example. When Selco came out with their solar lamps, they wanted to essentially reach out to the rural areas, particularly those areas where there is no electricity, so that people can get it. Now, they developed it and they have to sell it, but the actual consumers who want it, there is a need for them, but they don't have the capacity to buy. For example, let us assume one solar lamp at that time costed about 10,000 rupees. But your clientele group in the rural area, they don't have that 10,000 rupees to buy it. Okay, or at least they can't pay that 10,000 rupees in one stretch. Some of them cannot even pay 1,000 rupees at a stretch. They are your clientele. Imagine, you have to supply goods to them and then you have to make a profit. How are you going to do that? So you have to be innovative. Once you know the stakeholder expectation, you can be innovative. So what Selco did? Selco negotiated with the banks and it tied up with some of the banks and said that, okay, I'm selling this unit at 10,000 rupees to this person. You give that 10,000 rupees loan to him. Okay. And you don't have to worry about collateral. You don't have to worry about security because I myself is the security. If that person doesn't pay, I'll pay. Now just imagine, what is this innovation? Because you know very clearly what is the economic position of your consumer, your stakeholder. You know that is your market. You have to sell to that market only because that is your social objective. Plus you have to make a profit. So you have to empower your consumer to be able to buy your product. And if that person goes to the bank will not give a loan because the person will not have any collateral. But if your organization says, I am responsible, if that person doesn't pay, I will pay, then bank will agree. So this is the innovation. So this innovation is possible when you have very clear, very good clarity about the expectations and actual levels of the stakeholders. Same thing, if it is a question of investors, as stakeholders, what is investors' expectation? If investors say, okay, I'll give you money without any return for 2 years, but from third year you have to pay me. If that is what your investors are looking at, then you should know very clearly whether with this kind of a strategy, whether you will be able to get a surplus so that you can pay them. Or at least in 2 years' time, will you be able to generate additional resources, additional finance from other sources so that you don't have to depend on these stakeholders anymore. So these things will have to be worked out. And then another critical thing is every social enterprise should begin by working on the basic strength of the organization. Don't think first about what are my limitations. think about what are my strengths. What is it that is positive in my organization? What is it that is positive with me? For example, if you say, okay, I have 10 people who are willing to bring in so much money, that is assured. I have 5 people who are ready to work for 2 years at a certain level of salary. Okay. Or maybe there are some young people who would be willing to work 1 or 2 years and then leave. So on rotation, I am going to get my human resource. Or you can say, okay, I have assured number that I can sell. Some of these things, what you have, you work on that strength and try to build on the strength. That is what every social enterprise will have to think about. Then continuous and effective communication with stakeholders. That means as transparent as possible. I think a social enterprise need to be on a real-time basis communicating with the stakeholders. Stakeholders should know every day, every week, every day, possibly what is happening in the organization, because keeping them informed will automatically make them become more considerate towards the organization. Okay, so that is to be done. Then ensure that financial return to the investors match with the market interest rates. That means when you are returning, when you are giving a monetary return to the investor, to the extent possible, you have to make sure that the minimum that they would have got, let us say by keeping that money as a fixed deposit, that much return they will get. In today's situation, let us say that somebody, if they simply keep that money as deposit, they get 7% interest or 8% interest. If you can, as a social enterprise, ensure that the return that you give to them is at least that much, then I am sure it will be very easy for you to attract capital and start operating. So that minimum should be kept in mind, and project your social accruals as much as possible. Highlight the social as value as much as possible. This is very, very important. So every time the stakeholders will have to keep getting that idea that they are benefited on a social term. For example, if you are a microfinance organization and lending money to the poor people should keep thinking, okay, this is the benefit I got. I was not getting any money from any source. Nobody was giving anything to me. At least there is somebody now who recognizes me. Okay, that is a value. That recognition is a value. So if it is for investors, then you will tell them, okay, your monetary return is so much, but look at this. Because of your investment, we were able to help 1,000 people to become self-reliant. So you have contributed in making 1,000 people self-reliant. That's the social value for them. This is to be projected as much as possible. Now, if that is to be done, if that is the strategy, then the critical issue is how are you going to measure these social accruals? How are you going to decide? Tell them, look here, you have got so much in terms of social return. How are you going to do that? Right? There are methods of doing that. I am not going to the details of that, but just want you to be sure that these things are available, and some of them you are already familiar. For example, social audit, you are already very familiar. Social accounting, you are already very familiar, I think. So just as we have social audit, social accounting, etc., there are methodologies by following which it is possible for you to measure the social value also. For example, there is a method called social return on investment. Okay, so we call it SROI. Sometimes it is also called SSORI. That means Solutions Social Return on Investment. It's also called SROI. In the SROI, many types of assessments are available. Both qualitative and quantitative assessments are available. You can use that and try and make a assessment of the social value. Similarly, there is a method called theory of change. In theory of change, we essentially try and make a comparison of where somebody existed at a given point of time and where that person is at the reporting point of time. How things have changed over a period of time. So that assessment can be made. Social impact metrics. There are social impact metrics available. Okay, some of them are already standardized. You can use those metrics, or new metrics also can be developed to do that. So that can be used. Then there are technology based social effect tracking. Uh, one is assessing, the other one is tracking how the changes are taking place. Again, on a real time basis, tracking is possible. And when tracking is possible, reporting on a real time basis is also possible. So you will have to, I think, use the technology for that. Then comparison with global benchmarks. Another way is you can compare your performance with certain global benchmarks and communicate it to the stakeholders. For example, one important benchmark that we have now is the SDGs by the United Nations, as you know, has come out with the Sustainable Development Goals. Between 2015 and 2030, we have to achieve so much. And these sustainable development goals, the beauty of this is there are some quantitative targets given, okay, for poverty alleviation, for environmental standards, for carbon emission, for protecting the rights of women, for providing a better working environment, for reducing consumption of electricity, but so many things. There are quantitative parameters available already in SDG. So you can, as a social enterprise, project and say, okay, in 1 year time, in 2 year time, in terms of the benchmark set by SDG, we have achieved so much. Okay. Now, if you can project that, then for the stakeholders, you will be giving a comparison with a global benchmark and say, they feel happy. Okay, my investment has contributed to this, or my patronaging this organization has contributed to it, or I am accessing goods and services from an organization which is doing this. So these kind of things will be communicated. Therefore, there are methods. We will have to decide which method is suitable given the nature of activity that my social enterprise is doing, and try and make use of them. Some of them are standardized, some of them are still evolving. New methods of measurements are also coming up. There is also a lot of debate whether this is right, this is right. All these are going on, but social enterprises are not without any instruments. There are instruments available for measuring social value that will have to be used, and value assessment can be made. Okay, this is about strategy formulation. You will have to have proper strategy for blending the social value and financial value. That is to be evolved. That is to be evolved in a participative manner with the stakeholders. And once you put that in place, the next thing will be, of course, functional management. Next thing will be how effectively you are going to manage that, which means your financial management, not resource mobilization, but financial management, and more importantly, human resource management. And then there is issue of governance, how effectively you govern it, or maybe marketing management. So these issues will come in once you have the strategy in place. It is highly advisable that every social enterprise need to develop this strategy on short-term, medium-term, and long-term basis, like any other business organization, and effectively implement it through functional management. So this is the third part about strategy formulation. So what did we do in the unit 2 today? We focused on 3 elements. One is how to establish a social enterprise, how you choose a forum, and how you select a legal form, and how you are going to do that. And then we looked at how the entire idea of raising money, raising capital takes place, and what sources we have and how we can tap those sources. And finally, we looked at how strategy is formed, especially the strategy of matching social value and financial value, how that is formed, what instruments are available for that. Okay, the reference for this would be, I have yesterday given you the 2 books. I forgot to show you that. Now, this book, is what I talk about by Rodley Duff and Mike Bull. In this book, chapter 5 to 9. If you simply go through that, all these elements will be available. And the other one is a smaller one. As I said, this book is Sage India publication. This is a smaller book. This is so I don't know how you are. Okay, maybe I hope you see this. Anyway, so this has separate chapter on strategic planning and management. You can see that, including a reference to measurement of social value. So those things are available. Plus, if you go to internet source, you get lot of material, small guides. For example, guide to startup social enterprises, new social enterprises, or guide to what are the 10 stages of establishing social enterprise. Like that, you get many material, freely downloadable materials are there. You can refer to that also. Okay, thank you. If you have questions, the next half an hour, whatever it is.
Thank you, sir. Now, participants, you please raise the questions in the chat box. Sir, there are questions here. How SE can communicate social values? One question is from Harish Chen.
1 minute, let me start. How social. Okay, there are different ways in which a social enterprise can keep communicating with different stakeholders. One is you measure them and then prepare some kind of a social value report and give it, circulate it. It could be annual basis, quarterly basis, or anything like that. The other one is
pay taxes. So is there any conjunction from the government for such SC?
Please stop it. Hearing Manasa, Lakeshwari, please put up the audio. Okay, so essentially what you are doing here is you are stakeholders know question comes what you we should avoid this people speaking, that's the problem. Okay. Do social enterprises have to pay taxes? If so, is there any concession? I think yesterday we discussed this question. If you are not there yesterday, social enterprises are like any other business organizations, and therefore they have to pay whatever tax is there. As of now, there are no concessions, unless of course there is a particular activity. Otherwise, there is. IPO or joint stock company can act as social enterprise. Yes, of course, there is absolutely no problem. You can be a joint stock company. You can. It is possible. You can still be a social enterprise because you will be essentially focusing adding social. Okay, right. Okay. Any other question? I think I answered the 3 questions that we have here.
Sir, SE can go to IPO or joint stock company. One question is, Boxes.
Yeah, I told that maybe there was audibility problem. Yes, if it is an
IPO or just a
company, it can go for IPO. It can go for any form, because it depends on which legal form you have opted for. That's all. So you can be a typical joint stock company with IPO, everything, and then you can be a social enterprise.
The expenditure will be very high if they form the company and go for initial public offering. Regulatory requirements are more. It is very difficult in the beginning to go for IPO. Yes.
No, certainly no. That's it. Technically, yes, it is
Yes,
possible.
yes. Yeah.
But it is for the social entrepreneurs to decide whether really possible, whether it is really worth it.
Worth it for going for IPO. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Next question, please.
If SE started to dominating in all sector of the state, what could be the effect on the
Effect on economy.
Yeah, it will be very good to the economy if all organizations try and become socially oriented organizations. Absolutely, it is much better, because I am sure it is going to create a more participative, more democratic, more distributive kind of an environment. But we have to also remember that right now it doesn't look possible anyway,
Possible.
because
Yes.
social enterprises are still emerging, and they are only in a few sectors where there is this opportunity. But in European Union, a lot of organizations have started developing much higher social orientation, because started putting their own kind of restrictions on some kind of an upper limit for profit making. That we shouldn't be making more than so much profit. We would always be looking for as much profit as possible, but that is now coming down in some cases, especially in those countries which we consider as the post-welfare economies. That means we have crossed that benchmark in the welfare state, gone beyond. In such states or in such countries, companies are putting their kind of a self-restriction for which is nothing but trying to part with that benefit to the employees, to the customers. It is happening, but it is still very, very, very nascent stage. So domination, I don't think can really happen. Right.
So next question is, do SC always work for social? Do SC always work for social? Sundar Shetty.
I don't know. I mean, I understand that. Do they always have a social goal? Do they always have a social objective? Yes. That's why they are called as. Yeah. They always work for social good. Yes. They have to be. Otherwise, they are not social enterprises. But please remember, in their pursuit of working for social good, they are not landing up in financial problem. That is also there. They want to remain afloat. They want to make a surplus, mainly to make sure that they survive. They remain viable. That's also there. How social enterprise can justify themselves, we are doing good. But every business organization wanted to do as best as possible. Yes, every business organization wants to do as best as possible. Now, what do we mean by as best as possible? As best as possible in terms of profit or in terms of other things? Yes, a social enterprise can justify itself by not earning too much profit, by not distributing too much profit to the investors, and instead making goods and service available of good quality at lesser price to those people who are not accessing those goods and services. So that itself, for example, simply stated, again I'll give example of Selco. Who are the customers largely that Selco is catering to? Okay, where is the actual niche market for this organization? You will find that, let us say, 75% of its products are sold in rural areas. It is not that they are not selling in urban areas. You assume there is an organization where 75-80% of its products are actually sold in rural areas. You have already become a social enterprise by doing that, which means you have developed goods and services, number one, that are needed by rural people, number two, that can be accessed, that means in terms of price to them. Therefore, obviously, you will be you can justify yourself as a social enterprise. What is the need to convert enterprises as social enterprises? Because already enterprises are following CSR. Yes. This is, I think, a good question, because this question is being asked everywhere. We don't need social enterprises. We'll have business organizations. Let business organization also be socially responsible. Yes, that's a very good thing. Actually, social enterprises have come up because for-profit organizations have not been generally very socially responsible. That is the whole question. They are not so much socially responsible because the ways of earning profit that they are following are many times not good to the society. Okay, yes, they are spending part of the profit for social activities, but the method of earning the profit itself is creating social problems. Let us imagine, for example, just an example, I'm saying there is a liquor company. Okay, now the liquor company earns huge profit, and let us assume that it spends more than that 5%, 6%, 1%, whatever is stipulated, more than that on education. Now the problem is, it is not a social enterprise. It is doing its CSR activity. It is spending more money on education, very good, but by producing liquor, it is already creating a social problem. Okay, now therefore a lot of for-profit organizations follow methods of making profit which go detrimental to the social interest. Therefore, social enterprises have become necessary. However, if all business organizations become socially responsible, that means they follow increasingly environmental friendly ways, they do not concentrate too much on very high profit, they make better quality available to everybody. Now, if that happens, then in a way, all business organizations become social enterprises. If that happens. So right now, the need for social enterprises has come up because all business organizations are not becoming socially as much responsible as they should be. That is the whole idea. Okay.
Next question, please.
Can you repeat what is social impact matrix? Okay, social impact matrix actually refer to some quantitative indicators of what is a social change that has taken place. Okay, these are available. Some matrix have been developed. So in different countries, we can start making use of them. That means you can say, okay, this method, this quantitative indicator is already available, and I have achieved it. So you can show like that. The investor in social enterprise are not much rational, so their funds may be misused. How the government can control these things? Well, it is not that the investors in a social enterprise are not rational, but their rationality is slightly different. Okay, that means their expectation is slightly different. Now, with regard to government control, as I said, a social enterprise is an incorporated legal entity like any other organization. I said it may be a partnership firm. So if it is a partnership firm, there are rules of control on them. They can be trust or society. Again, there are rules for controlling them. They can be joint stock company rules. There are rules to control them. So government control on social enterprises is equal to government control on any other type of business organization. Therefore, it is not that because they are social enterprises, they are going to misuse it. Okay. Other for-profit organizations are also misusing. It is happening. There are scandals happening in joint stock companies, big business houses. All those things are happening. It might happen in social enterprises also. Many types of organizations are misused by people. NGOs are misused in some cases. Similarly, social enterprise also might be misused. I'm not saying that all social enterprises are holy cows. I'm only saying that social enterprise is an organizational choice to do a business activity in a socially more lucrative, socially more beneficial way. And because of the opportunity available for that, social enterprises have come up. Okay.
What are the ethical boundaries of a social enterprise?
Where is that?
So next question
Okay,
is,
what are
what
the
are the
ethical
ethical
boundaries for
boundaries of a social
social enterprise?
enterprise?
See, I don't say ethical, moral, these are not the critical issues. What is very important is that every organization will have its declared objective, will have its declared strategy. As a social enterprise, you are saying, I am doing this. Now, actually doing that is the ethics, actually doing that is the moral standard. It is not that somebody is going to set an ethical framework for social enterprises. Okay, that is why whether an organization is a social enterprise or not is not decided through the way it is registered. It is decided through the way it is actually functioning. Okay. Is there any certification of being a
for being social enterprise?
Yeah. In some countries, yes, not in India yet. Okay. As I said yesterday, in UK, in European Union, we have social enterprise mark that is there. That's some standard. So some accrediting kind of agencies are there. They will give this social enterprise mark. In India, it is not there yet. How could an organization manage equal balance between profit making and social concerns? And that, I think that's what I spoke about. It's actual challenge for social enterprises, but it is possible. If you look at the stories of some of those organizations which I have cited as examples, just go to their websites and see. You will see how they have managed it. Selco is one example. I'll give you some other examples which I think you can just note down. Go to those organizations' websites and see. First, let me give you some examples globally. Yesterday, I told you one example, namely Big Issue. Okay, it's a magazine. Just go to that and check. Then there is Divine Chocolate. There is a chocolate company which is called Divine Chocolate. Okay, you can actually online buy chocolates. So just go to Google, search for Divine Chocolate, and look at their website. You know what they are doing. This is very important. In England, in UK, you have a organization called Ethical Properties. You know, they are into real estate. Remember, real estate is an area where I think doing things not fully legally is more. So their name itself is Ethical Properties. Just go and check. In India, I give a few examples like Selco, I have already said. There is a courier service called Miracle Couriers, okay, which appoints only deaf and dumb people. So it's a courier organization, like any other courier organization. So you can check that and see how they are doing. I think the best way would be download this ADB report, Asian Development Bank report on social enterprise landscape India report, and there you get many examples in financial sector, educational sector, health sector in India. Then go and check their website and see how they are trying to manage this. That's the best way, because only when you know exactly that organization, you will be able to do that.
So one more question was there. What kinds of supports given by the government to SE?
Yeah, nothing, because according to the government, there is nothing like a social enterprise, right? According to the government, this is also either a partnership or a sole trading or a joint stock company, whatever it is. However, depending on certain type of activity, government gives some support, but that support is available not only to social enterprise, it is available to anyone who does that activity, that kind of a thing. How could an organization manage equal balance?
It's answered, sir. It's already answered. So any other questions from the participants? Okay, no questions, sir. Can we conclude?
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you very much, sir, for providing the opportunity to conduct second webinar on resource mobilization and strategies for. Please unmute. We have completed the 2 seminars, so 2 webinars on the series of 4 webinars. And on 10th, we are planning 3rd webinar series. The topic is on leadership and governance of social enterprises. On that day, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Hemant Kumar, wants to inaugurate and speak on the subject. I request all of you to join and also request others to join this webinar series. We can accommodate up to 1,000 participants in this platform. I am grateful to you and I express my sincere thanks to Professor Yashwant Dogre for making a presentation on the social enterprises. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Rohini here.
Rohini is joining.
Sir, namaskara.
Okay.
Namaste. Yes. Okay.
Chennai, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
It was very good.
Thank you.
After a long time, I could hear your talk.
Lecture. Yes.
Good.
ಸರ್ ಎಂಡ್
Thank you
ಮಾಡಿದ
very
ಸರ್
much.
Right.
ಸರ್
Okay.
ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡದ
ಮಾಡಿ end ಮಾಡಿ.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್
Thank you very much for cooperation. Thank
See
you.
you on 10th.